Hey there. You're listening to the quiet between the noise, a space where your mind can rest and the weight of the day gently fades away. Here, there's no rush, no pressure, just soft whispers, gentle pauses, and a place for you to simply breathe. So go ahead, get cozy. Let your shoulders relax. Let your thoughts drift like slow-moving clouds. You've done enough, and you deserve to rest. Take a deep breath in and slowly breathe out. This is your time now to unwind, to let go, and to gently drift into sleep. Tonight's story is just about to begin. Story name, Biopod number 9. Part 1, Silence in Orbit. You can't hear screams in space, but that doesn't mean no one is screaming. My name is Ilara Voss. When I was 29, I was recruited into the Eon 7 crew, an 11-month-long extraterrestrial biology research mission. It was a private project funded by EASA Corporation, one of the major players in the space technology industry at the time. We worked aboard the Aurelia Station, a state-of-the-art space research station in low Earth orbit, nearly 400 miles above the planet. It wasn't my first space mission, but it was certainly the most terrifying one. What we were studying was simply called Specimen 9, a mysterious life form excavated from beneath hundreds of meters of ice on Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. No one, not a single person, could determine what it was. No cells, no DNA, no biological activity, no movement. We thought it was dead. We were wrong. I was the only person on the station permitted to enter Biochamber 9, the isolated containment unit for the specimen. At first, I believed my role was purely observational, note-taking, photography, monitoring vitals. A monotonous task, but within the first 5 days, I started feeling off. Have you ever had the sensation that someone's watching you in an empty room? I stood in front of the specimen's containment case, just a few steps away. Inside, the gray-silver sphere lay motionless like a chunk of stone, but I could feel it breathing, and I felt it was staring at me even though it had no eyes. I began dreaming the same dream every night. In it, I drifted through an endless black sea, my body weightless. Then, from behind, a voice would whisper in my ear, "Ilara." I always woke up at 3:17. Never earlier, never later. My watch would always show that exact time, as if someone, was calling me awake from outside. In the crew, the commander was Ruiz, a retired military officer, tough but fair. Hallstrom was the chief engineer, addicted to coffee and always working. Lena Zhao was the doctor, kind and composed. Marcus Deal handled navigation and communications, cold, quiet. And lastly, Arjun Patel, the pilot, the only one who still had a sense of humor out here. None of them knew I was hearing something every night. I didn't dare tell anyone. I was a scientist. I was supposed to rely on data, not feelings. But then I discovered something. On the 13th day, while inspecting the specimen, I noticed that a section of its surface was missing. A small patch, as if someone had sliced off a piece, but we had never performed any physical procedures. And on the floor, floating gently in zero gravity, I saw something. A strand of hair, long, black, and clearly not mine. Part 2. Cold sleep, I kept that strand of hair. I sealed it in a small nylon pouch, carefully, as if preserving a piece of evidence from a crime scene. Even though I knew, technically, there was no crime scene, there were 6 of us on board, and no one had hair that long except for me and Dr. Lena. But this strand was too long, over 60 centimeters. My hair only reached mid-back, and Lena always kept hers trimmed to shoulder length. I asked around discreetly. Had anyone entered compartment 9 recently? No one admitted to it. You're not allowed in there without authorization, Ilara. Commander Ruiz reminded me when I tried to probe casually. I hadn't lied. I'd locked that compartment all week. There was no reason for anyone to have gone in. And more importantly, why would they? That night, I dreamed of darkness again. But this time, I wasn't alone. Something was floating next to me, shapeless, undefined, just a blur like smoke. I couldn't see through it, but I could feel it, smiling. And then it spoke. We were once one, and we will be again. I woke at 3:17, as always, but this time I wasn't alone. There was a smear on my cabin wall, like a wet hand had dragged across it. Not sweat, not water. When I got closer, I smelled something hard to describe, metallic, damp soil, and something like ozone. I scanned the cabin with a handheld biodetector. No signals. But I knew. I knew something had been here. I spent the next morning reviewing the corridor's security footage. Everything was functioning fine, except from 3 a.m. to 3:30 a.m. Total black screen. No error messages. I called in Hallstrom, the engineer, to take a look. He scratched his head and shrugged. Sometimes circuits glitch due to electromagnetic interference from the Van Allen belts. It's normal, Ilara. Number I knew what interference looked like. This wasn't that. This was a data wipe. Someone had deliberately erased the footage, or something. The next day, I returned to biological compartment 9. The specimen was still there, externally unchanged, but when I looked at it, it felt closer than before, as if it had moved. But how could it? No legs, no muscles, no visible locomotion mechanism. I placed my hand on the isolation glass. It shuddered. No, it wasn't in my head. Its surface, that material like synthetic skin fused with liquid metal, rippled in a faint wave, like goosebumps reacting to cold. I stepped back. No one would believe me if I said this, and I couldn't say it aloud. I had no proof. So I started placing a personal camera, no larger than a coin, inside the compartment each time I left. I needed to know if it was really moving. That night I dreamed of the door opening. No sound, just a soft hiss, like metal being scraped from the inside. And in the dream, I stepped into compartment 9. The specimen was no longer in its case. It was behind me. Awake. 3:17. Part 3. Zero gravity. When I woke up the next morning, my throat was parched, like I'd just come down from a fever. I dragged myself out of bed and switched on the air regulation system in my private cabin. The first thing I checked wasn't the temperature. It wasn't my heart rate. It was the personal recording device I had placed in biocontainment chamber 9. My hands trembled as I plugged it into the data reader. The footage began to play, 6 hours long. I fast-forwarded. Nothing in the first segment. Dim signal lights, no movement, no sound. But at 3:16, a shadow slid across the screen. I stopped breathing. Rewound. It wasn't clear. Just a blurry black streak, neither tall nor short, with no human shape. Its movement didn't resemble a living creature. It didn't walk. It drifted, like ink dispersing in midair. I tried to analyze the frame, increased brightness, zoomed in, paused, and in the final moment before the shadow vanished, I saw a single circular dot, like a wide-open eye in the dark. It didn't reflect light, no whites. It stared straight at the camera, and I swear, with everything I still had left in me, I swear I heard a faint chuckle in the video, even though the device had no mic to record sound. I decided to speak to Lena, the station's only medical doctor. If anyone would sense I was unraveling from the inside, it'd be her. Lena studied me silently for a long moment. Then she placed a gentle hand on my shoulder and said, "Ilara, your eyes have tiny red spots. Looks like a burst capillary. You haven't been sleeping well, have you?" I nodded. "Sleep paralysis?" I froze. I'd never told anyone. But Lena spoke as if she already knew. I've had it too, 3 nights now. I stared at her. You've seen it too. Lena didn't reply, but her eyes sank, like someone who'd failed to hide something for far too long. We went back to her cabin and locked the door. Lena pulled out a mini hard drive she'd hidden in her medkit. She said she'd recorded a strange sound that played every night through the ventilation system. I listened. At first, it was just the usual electrical hum, but then a very faint melody began. Not a voice, not machinery, but a lullaby. A lullaby in a language I didn't understand. The sound rippled softly like a radio signal from another world. No clear tune, just whispers repeated again and again. I didn't understand it, but in my heart I knew what it meant. Sleep now as blood runs dry. Dream now as bones grow cold. We will drift together to where the light cannot reach. I gagged on the spot. That night I returned to Chamber 9, this time with Lena by my side. The specimen still lay there, motionless, unchanged. I opened the visor and stared deep into its surface. I didn't know why I did it. I just got pulled in. For several seconds or minutes, I couldn't tell. I no longer felt like I was in the room. I felt like I was sliding down a wet, endless tunnel, surrounded by the echoes of a million voices. And then I saw myself standing on a planet with no sky, only pits and mossy green lights blinking like fish eyes. Lena pulled me back. I collapsed to the floor. Ilara was starting to lose control, and Aurelia Station was starting to drift off orbit. Part 4. The lower deck. 3 days after our meeting with Lena, we lost all contact with Earth. No warning, no error reports. The communication channels simply vanished from the system. Ruiz, the commander, ordered a full check of the external antennas. But the 2 EVA engineers took nearly 10 hours to return, and they found nothing out of the ordinary. They came back without saying a word. I noticed their eyes. Blank, dull like the surface of a dead lake. Just days before, they were laughing with me in the small kitchen. Now they didn't laugh anymore. They didn't even eat. I watched them during the meal from a distance. They just sat there, dipping their spoons into the air, then raising them to their mouths as if eating something invisible. I turned away, not wanting to dry heave again. Lena and I started communicating secretly through small paper notes hidden behind the oxygen duct in the med bay. We didn't dare use the devices because we knew someone or something was listening. I wrote, "We need to check Deck D. I hear noises from there every night." She replied, "Deck D was shut down 6 months ago, but I hear it too. Sounds like sliding footsteps." We decided to go down, an auxiliary engineering deck once used for testing anti-gravity engines. Now it was sealed off as no longer necessary, but someone had changed the lock. I had to use an old technician's code to open it. Only Ruiz and I still remembered that code. I didn't tell him. Lena came with me. The hallway lights on Deck D flickered like something breathing. There was no wind, but we heard a faint whistling, like a needle brushing against glass. We reached the final junction where the secondary gravity generator had once been. And then we saw it. A second Chamber 9. No one had ever mentioned a second Chamber 9. It wasn't on the original schematics. But that steel door was real, standing right there in front of us, marked with a symbol I'd never seen anywhere on the station. 3 interlocking rings, twisted together like an eye spiraling inward. I touched the handle. Ice cold, like it had just been frozen. Lena stopped me. "Don't open it. Not now." Her voice turned stern but trembled. I've seen that symbol before." I turned to her. "Where?" "In a dream, yesterday, and the day before that." She took a deep breath. "And in my heart." We left Deck D without opening the door. But I knew we would have to return. And worse, someone had already been there before us. Because that night when I woke up, 3:17 as always, I felt a wet hand resting on my neck, the skin translucent and glistening like gel, with 3 interlocking rings engraved on the back. It didn't squeeze, it just rested there, as if to say, "I'm here." I didn't dare move. My eyes shifted to the corner of the room, and I saw Ruiz standing there, silently watching me. But he no longer had eyes. Part 5. Transformation. I couldn't sleep anymore. It was impossible. The feeling that someone, was always standing behind me, just waiting for me to blink, so it could touch the back of my neck or rip my soul out like pulling silk threads. Lena wasn't any better. Her eyes were sunken, her lips pale. She started losing short-term memory, often forgetting the names of the equipment, even forgetting why she came to the medical room. But the worst part was the phantom patient. She claimed to have treated a man not on the list. A tall man with a shaved head and 3 fingers. He requested morphine, but when Lena withdrew the syringe, it was empty, even though she hadn't injected anything. I started hearing voices through the internal communication system, but only when I was alone. Not cries for help. It was the familiar lullaby, like a recording from Lena's hard drive. But this time the lyrics had changed. Don't resist, Ilara. The body is borrowed. Consciousness is just the door of the station. Open the door and return. One day, as I was checking the backup power, Ruiz entered the technical room, smiling as though he had never stood in my room with those empty eyes just days before. "The station is stabilizing," he said. "It seems we are evolving." I turned around, still holding my tool, my back freezing. "What did you say?" Ruiz tilted his head. "Ilara, can't you feel it? This station is not infected, it's regenerating. The thing in Module 9, it's not bad. It's the first prototype." I took a step back. "You opened the door in Level D, didn't you?" He didn't answer. He just smiled, and his eyes began leaking. Not blood. Thick greenish mucus flowing down his cheek. "Ilara, there is no more Ilara. We're just keeping the shell. The core inside is being renewed." I ran. His laughter echoed behind me, reverberating through the halls as if coming from the depths of the station, deep and full of meaning, as though the station itself was mocking me. Lena and I decided to do something crazy, return to Level D, this time to open that door. No choice left. We couldn't hide forever. These things didn't just want our bodies. They wanted our consciousness, our memories, everything that made us human. We wore old technical suits. Not much protection, but some neurosensor isolation. The Level D door had been opened at some point, but inside it, there was a spiral staircase leading downward, something not in any design. The station didn't have a lower level, but now it did, and clearly it had always had one, long before we realized. The staircase led to a dark lab, with the only light coming from glowing containers, and in each container was a version of me. Ilara, Ilara, Ilara. Not perfect copies. Each version was flawed. Eyes growing on the back, hands fused like fish fins, some without faces. I gasped. "Lena, they made me. They're experimenting to turn me into something else." She squeezed my hand. "Not just you. Look over there." I turned. Another row. Of Lena. When we turned to leave, the lights suddenly went out. The entire station vibrated, like something too large to be contained within the metal was writhing. A deep screech pierced through every sheet of steel. And then we heard ourselves. "Lena, run! Ilara, don't leave me!" The echoes of my own voice from the deformed versions in the containers. I grabbed Lena's hand and ran, but as we reached the stairs, something slid down from the ceiling, landing in front of us. An empty, gutted corpse. It was Ruiz. His mouth opened, and from it, a slimy creature crawled out, its shape resembling an underdeveloped fetus with adult-sized eyes. I don't remember how I made it back to my personal cabin. I just remember screaming until my voice went hoarse, then a blank space. When I woke up, the announcement system repeated one single sentence: "Transformation accepted. Synchronizing. Please do not resist." And Elara knew this was just the beginning. Part 6. The Final Flight. When I woke up, I no longer felt like myself, not just because my body was stiff and I felt numb, but because I couldn't feel anything about myself anymore. It was like someone had erased the core of who I was, leaving behind a hollow copy with no memory, no emotions. I had become one of them. Them, the distorted creatures in the tanks on level D. They didn't look human, but they carried a part of the human soul. Distorted copies, imperfect, incomplete replicas, as though life and death were struggling in the same body. I hurriedly looked around. This was not my personal cabin. This was a strange room with faint flickering lights. I stood up, feeling that this body was no longer the same. Each step was like moving against an invisible force. And then I remembered that night, when I saw Ruiz's corpse. They had killed him, and now they had killed me. I left the room, walking through the empty hallway. Everything on this station was unfamiliar, unlike anything I had ever known. It was like the station was not just a place where I worked and lived, but a trap waiting for me. I made my way to the control room, where the alarm system still echoed, but when I entered, I saw Ruiz sitting there, his eyes no longer eyes. They had taken his eyes. He turned and smiled, the smile of the dead. "Welcome, Elara. You've come back." His voice was deep and muffled, like a sound coming from a tomb. But there was something wrong with the tone of his voice. I'm not Elara anymore, am I?" He nodded. "Number, you're not Elara. You're one of us now. Who are you? What do you want?" Ruiz stood up, his eyes gleaming with a satisfaction I couldn't describe. "We are copies of you, alien beings who have infiltrated our minds. But instead of destroying us, they've helped us, reborn. This body is just a shell. The soul is what we truly want. Alien beings." Those words stunned me, but I felt something else within me. Not fear, but a strange comfort. I walked down the hallway and my fate became clearer. They had succeeded. My copy and the others had begun to assimilate everything, including the station itself. What I once thought was the human mind was not the final consciousness. I had been completely deceived. This station was not a research facility. This station was the place for experiments in biological transformation. I and the others were victims, stepping stones for a plan to renew life. I arrived at the control room, and as I looked at the screen, I saw the door to space open, revealing a vast and dangerous void outside. It was waiting for us. Ruiz looked at me, his smile growing more eerie. "We'll leave here. Do you want to join us?" I looked out into the space beyond the window, feeling as though I could never go back. If I stepped outside, I didn't know what I would become. But if I stayed, I would just be a part of them. A door led me out, where the infinite universe awaited, and I had to decide escape or accept the truth and become part of the alien being. The final flight wasn't a flight of a ship. It was a flight of transformation, where there was no longer any difference between human and alien. And Elara made her choice. But the ending would forever have no end. Conclusion: Elara's final journey. I stood in the hallway where the universe beyond beckoned, with the door wide open. It wasn't just a door to the space station. It was the final door, the door through which human life could be reborn in a new body, a new form. Ruiz stood nearby as if waiting for me to decide, But now I no longer saw him as a human. He was a creature controlled, a stepping stone in a larger plan. And I could become a part of them, a part of this transformation. Lena. I thought of Lena. She had lost everything and was now just a copy with no memory. She couldn't go back. But I, this Ilara, still had something in my hands. I still had the right to decide. I approached the door. Outside, the vast, endless universe awaited, but I didn't feel fear. A strange, cold sensation filled my body. This cold wasn't from the space beyond, but from the feeling of not being able to return. One thing I knew for sure, this body was no longer mine. It had become part of an experiment I could not control, but I could choose what to do with my soul. Ilara, you don't need to think anymore, Ruiz's voice echoed from behind me, but this time I didn't want to listen anymore. My copy, my shadow, had once been human, but now it was no longer human. They had taken our core, but the soul was something untouchable. No matter what, I still had that part in me. I took a deep breath. A gentle sensation ran through my body, and what was my decision? I would not step outside, not because I was afraid, but because I had decided that the human within me could not die. Not now, not by their hands. Now was the time to rebuild the broken pieces. I turned to face Ruiz, and then a soft laugh escaped my lips. It wasn't a laugh of triumph or satisfaction. It was the laugh of someone who had understood the truth. "Thank you, Ruiz," I said, "but I cannot follow you." I looked down the hallway, toward the open doors, the vast universe beckoning. But I would not go. The next step I would take was not to find my way out. I would find a way back to that room, the one where I would reconstruct myself. Not to escape, but to have a second chance, to fix things, to free those who were left. Ruiz didn't say anything more. He just stood there, a part of the darkness in the vast hallway. The alien creatures had entered me, but I wouldn't let them fully possess me. The final flight never came. This space station was no longer a place of death. It would be the place where I would rebuild myself, not as a victim of this experiment, but as someone responsible for what had happened. The space door closed. The cold wind brushed against me, but inside I was still Ilara, and I would fight to keep this soul. My journey had not yet ended. The end